Today, inflation running at its fastest pace in 30 years. Rent, too, is rising 10 times faster than 2019. Drug maker Merck stock up 8% today. It says its experimental drug for COVID-19 cuts the risk of death or hospitalization by 50%. It's now applying for emergency use with the FDA. And El Salvador using energy from volcanoes to power Bitcoin mining. The country is the first to make Bitcoin legal tender. That and much more coming up on NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. Here's telling you, but prices are still rising at one of the fastest rates on record. The PCE index rose at 3.6% in the year to August. That's the highest reading in 30 years. It's been at that level for 3 straight months. Consumer spending after inflation is up 0.4%, but that's still lower than 2 months ago, indicating consumers aren't very confident about spending money. Recent consumer sentiment reports would validate that. Another Fed forecast says the economy will grow slower in the third quarter than originally thought, cutting its GDP projection from 3.2% to 2.3%, a massive drop. Sees slower growth with consumer spending and domestic investment, with some economists warning that supply chain problems combined with easy fiscal and monetary policies are raising the risk of stagflation. A rental property report from Zumper compares rent prices across the 100 biggest cities and shows New York City now has the most expensive rent. San Francisco is in second place, followed by Boston. And the price of a one-bedroom apartment has jumped 10.7% nationwide since March 2020. A two-bedroom apartment has jumped even more by 13.1%. That's a massive jump from previous years. From 2019 to 2020, rent only increased 1%. The year before, it didn't increase at all. Even in smaller markets like Stockdale, Arizona, it's experienced major rent increase, now is the 10th highest on the Zumper list. So with the labor shortage still holding businesses back really across the country, some cities are forced to offer financial incentives to try and encourage people to move there and fill the gaps. One of those cities is Quincy, Illinois, and we're delighted to have the mayor of Quincy with us today. So you want to give us some insight into your initiative, Mayor?
Yeah, Quincy has done really well through the COVID issues of the last 18 months. Our local school district stayed open. Businesses were able to remain open. The economy is strong. Our core industry has continued to expand and continued to grow. With that, through their growth, there's a tremendous need for additional skilled workers. And in order to help them, Quincy has this program that we have named Quincy's Calling, and people can visit the website quincy'scalling.com to learn more about it. And August 1st, the City Council approved a financial incentive for people that move here to take one of the jobs. And if they do, we have a choice. They could either get up to $3,500 assistance on rent or lease. If they buy property, at the first year's property tax, they can get reimbursed the first $5,000. And so, yeah, we're excited. We're getting that program is getting extremely well response from people throughout the country. Even some overseas people are showing some interest as well.
Wow, so it's purely the growth of the city that's driving. What do you put that down to, particularly how you've come through the pandemic?
Well, the community's been a conservative company. We're the largest community in a 100-mile radius. We're along the Mississippi River. It's a big agricultural area, but because we're the largest community in 100 miles, we've become a medical center. We've got an extremely well-rated trauma hospital, with their own clinic physician group. We have 2 other clinic physician groups in the community. We've got long-standing manufacturing companies that have been around. Some have been around well over 100 years. All of them have hit new record sales in the last 5 years and continue to do quite well. these companies sell product not only across the US, but internationally as well. So it's a mix of the types of industries. We also have the technology, with all the latest, high-speed internet, you name it, whatever you have in New York, we have those technology tools available to us here in Quincy.
But remote work is a big thing now, right? A lot of people work from home. Are these people eligible for the incentives, or you got to work in a physical store there?
No, these incentives, if you relocate to Quincy, either lease or rent or purchase property in the city limits, and you're coming up with a new job. It's not a job that you had in Quincy that you are now just moving across the river or, from out of town into here. In that case, yes, you're eligible for these incentives.
Wow, amazing. Mayor Trope, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if you're in Los Angeles unvaccinated, you could soon be banned from entering most businesses. Next week, LA officials will vote on a measure to require proof of vaccination to enter restaurants, bars, gyms, and other indoor places. Most city council members, bar one, have said they support the proposal. And if it's approved, Los Angeles would join San Francisco and New York with widespread vaccination mandates. The new rule would take effect November, with political leaders across the United States, led by President Biden, raising pressure on the unvaccinated in recent weeks. But many Americans have criticized vaccine mandates as government overreach. And as some U.S. cities require restaurants to check proof of vaccination, some fast food chains are simply shutting their seating areas altogether. White Castle closed seating sections in all its New York City restaurants after the city started enforcing its mandate. Taco Bell says it encourages customers to place digital orders for pickup and delivery. McDonald's says its closing indoor seating will vary by area and circumstance. The move may dent sales, but could also eliminate costly labor to clean and check proof of vaccination. Inspectors in New York City have started issuing fines and warnings to establishments who are ignoring the rules. And Merck is requesting emergency use authorization for an experimental COVID-19 drug. It targets the CCP virus's ability to make copies of itself. NTD's Faye Quarter explains.
Merck has a new COVID-19 drug called molnupiravir. Experiments showed that molnupiravir reduced the risk of death or hospitalization for patients with mild to moderate COVID-19 by 50%. In a news release this morning, Merck says it will submit an application for emergency use authorization to the U.S. FDA as soon as possible.
The news of the efficacy of this particular antiviral is obviously very good news. The data are impressive.
Dr. Fauci says the FDA will look at the data as quickly as possible, and upon approval, the CDC will have to go through the same process.
The federal government has contracted to purchase 1.7 million doses to make this therapy available. The government also has an option for some additional doses. If approved, I think the right way to think about this is a potential additional tool in our toolbox.
Molnupiravir is an oral drug that targets the virus's ability to make copies of itself by putting errors into its genetic code. This shortens the period of sickness.
Even if it gets an approval from the FDA for emergency use, the bigger challenge is how do you get it to people and what kind of people will be able to afford it?
This professor of public health at New Mexico State University says even though Merck hasn't said how much it'll charge, he assumes it'll be a very high amount compared to other antiviral drugs.
Compared to the traditional antiviral drugs that we have in the market that have been in place for a long time, this would be almost double the price or triple the price.
Merck says it's in talks with other governments as well. Meanwhile, Pfizer, Roche, and Atea Pharmaceuticals are working on their own oral antiviral drugs. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
And shareholders of cloud software company Five9 have blocked Zoom from buying the company. Zoom had initially agreed with Five9 to purchase the company for nearly $15 billion in an all-stock buyout, but shareholders voted down the deal. Regulators were already reviewing it over possible national security concerns, And Zoom's connection with China has also been a concern in recent years. Five9's call center software would have enabled Zoom to expand its offerings following a boom during the pandemic. Since July, though, the company's growth has slowed and its stock has dropped over a quarter in value. And according to a digital marketing expert, search engines are still in their infancy, but Google has now announced a big step that could give us a glimpse into the future. It says its search results will be more specific and detailed after a new update, something that may give small businesses a better chance. NTD's Evelyn Lee has the details.
Google is redesigning its search engine. Soon its AI will be able to answer more specific and complicated queries,
helping you unlock more insights than ever before.
Google says its AI technology can better understand the search intent behind your queries and can even help you with complex tasks. That's because its AI is now multimodal.
Which means it can simultaneously understand information across a wide range of formats, like text, images, and video.
Google says that you could search for specific products based on a photo, or you could search for that pattern on a product. John McGee is a managing partner at Web Consoles. He says he is excited about the update, and he thinks others will be too.
I think users will like it. For me personally, looking at images or finding things that I might want to buy, say clothing or something like that online, you can now select the image and then that will link you to that product on Google Shopping.
He says artificial intelligence that can truly understand intent is more user-friendly because the new update will be able to answer questions more thoroughly.
Up to this point, we've searched things to answer individual questions, and that individual question might be tied to just an overall theme or topic.
This means the machine can potentially also give you answers to questions you didn't know you had. From a business standpoint, he says, removing the language barrier can mean more competition, but understanding search queries more specifically could also level the playing field and give small specialized businesses more exposure. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
And stocks rebounded on Wall Street Friday, but still ended their worst weekly decline since February. The Dow rose 483 points, about 1.5%. S&P 500 gained 50 points, about 1.2%. The Nasdaq added 118 points today, about 0.8%. And more investors are reportedly planning to reduce their exposure to China. A new survey by major fund manager Invesco shows 3 times as many investors, like pension funds and insurers, are planning to reduce their China allocation compared to what they said in 2019. And over 20% fewer investors are planning to increase their China allocations compared to that time, although most say they will. The Chinese Communist Party's suppression of private businesses this year has spooked some investors. It halted the IPO of one of the country's largest companies, Ant Group, as founder Jack Ma disappeared for a while afterwards. It also targeted American-listed companies like ride-hailing app Didi, likely hurting foreign investors. And now it's facing a potential debt crisis as its second-largest property developer, Evergrande, looks set to default without government help. So joining us to discuss China's struggles is the chief economist with Vested, formerly chief economist with investment firm Lord Abbett, Milton Ezrati. Milton, pleasure to see you as always. Thanks so much for coming on. A new survey has just found that 3 times as many firms or investment funds are reducing their exposure to China than said they were in 2019. I know sometimes you're in touch with various pension funds and others. Do you know, are they taking any concrete action? Are they expressing any concern about the Chinese market at the moment, Milton?
Well, everyone is expressing concern about the Chinese market. No one is doing a wholesale sellout that I know of. So people are just redoing their country risk assessments. Most of them, in fact, all of them that I know of, count against China relative to where they were last year or the year before. And so they're reducing their exposure, either by selling or by just increasing exposure elsewhere if they have a positive cash flow.
I think the latest, I suppose, challenge for investors there in the Chinese market is the power cuts that we're seeing. How do you see this play out for the Chinese economy? I would have assumed if you're shutting down factories and shutting down production, it's really not a good sign for your outlook, right?
It isn't. The Chinese economy is not in a position to grow the way it was. That has implications both for investment decisions directly, but also it has implications for debt, such as we saw with Evergrande, and the ability of Chinese firms, who presumably the investors would be investing in, to shoulder the debt that they acquired in past years. I'll add that the Chinese government's rather high-handed way of just telling people to reduce debt is compounding the problem.
I think great to have you on the show to ask you this question is, we had a report during the week that local government debt in China alone is now half of the country's GDP. It was massive. So it's a problem across China, this debt problem, whether in government or private or in businesses. Can they afford a problem like Evergrande, or will it bring the whole house of cards down?
Well, if it expands from Evergrande, it could. And unfortunately, I don't know whether it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate. Most of the local authorities worked hand in glove with real estate developers and actually issued a lot of the debt on behalf of the development. So a lot of this debt in local authorities in China is effectively the same sort of debt as we're seeing in Evergrande from excessive development.
Is there a way to unwind it, or what is the end game with a debt-laden economy like this?
It is a very difficult situation, and Beijing is going to have to step in. Beijing is talking a lot about moral imperatives and not allowing people to behave in this way. Unfortunately, the debt grew because China was growing fast and there was an array of opportunities. And any manager, whether they're managing a local authority or managing a company, says, if I go into debt, I can take advantage of this opportunity. And it's the slow growth in China that is doing this. And the authorities, in order to keep this house of cards, as you say, from collapsing, has to manage a soft landing. There are a number of ways to do that. We saw the same thing in the United States in 2008 and 2009. The authorities had to step in. A lot of people said you're bailing out bad players. They were, but they didn't do it to help them. They did it to sustain the system.
Milton Ezrati, vested. And inflation in the Eurozone hit a 13-year high, challenging the European Central Bank's view that price pressures are largely benign and will soon fade. The Consumer Price Index in the bloc rose to 3.4% over the year in September. That's the highest reading since September 2008. Higher energy bills were behind much of it, with energy prices rising over 17% year over year. Policymakers at the ECB, like here at the Federal Reserve, have been saying inflation is transitory and will fade once supply chain disruptions ease, but some economists believe that inflation could be stickier than they expect. Many British gas stations are still dry today after a chaotic week for drivers. Panic buying and even fights at the pumps were seen as drivers jostled in lines. NTD's Patrick Hayden in London has the details.
The UK's gas station emergency continues. Many stations are still dry. The country's been unable to supply fuel for its drivers, and for many it's essential to carry out their jobs or travel to work. The head of the Petrol Retailers Association also has concerns for its members selling gas at stations under tense conditions.
And people overtaking, fights breaking out on the forecourt, knives being drawn, filling up in plastic bags, etc., isn't helpful.
Government officials are saying the supply problem is abating, but retailers are saying that more than 2,000 gas stations were dry.
It looks like the situation is getting better in other parts of the UK, so Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, some parts of England, but the situation is not great, unfortunately, around London and the South East.
A chronic shortage of truck drivers is central to the crisis. The government's furlough scheme ended Thursday, which means some drivers will be looking to get back to work.
Well, all I can tell you, we spoke to one major logistics supplier yesterday, and they said they'd had around 700 applications to come and be a lorry driver, which is good news. I know what they're actively trying to improve the terms and conditions. What they're trying to do is make the driving a lorry more attractive, and we hope that there'll be a pool of labour that would be attracted to come into the industry.
And in a bizarre turn of events, the UK government sent letters this week to Germans residing in the UK, asking them to consider becoming truck drivers. German driving licenses issued before 1999 include a provision to drive trucks. One German in the UK who received the letter told The Independent he's sure conditions have improved for truck drivers, but he's going to stick with his role at an investment bank. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
I could check with some Germans living here in the States, too. Still to come this evening. Disney and Black Widow star Scarlett Johansson settled their lawsuit. What was it about, and will they ever work together again? And scientists in Singapore turn food waste into bandages. They say it's more sustainable and less expensive than traditional options. That and more coming up on NTD Business.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm gonna pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new!
Welcome back. El Salvador is successfully mining Bitcoin from volcanic energy. It's not the first country to do it, but it is the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender. That's why this is so critical for the crypto community. NTD's Phil Zoe has the details.
Volcano, lava, eruption, not things that come to mind when you think of Bitcoin mining. But that's exactly what's happening.
I'm really excited to see El Salvador start mining Bitcoin with volcanoes.
This might be, in the long run, a little bit of a double-edged sword for the Bitcoin community.
Sounds really cool, but it's not economically viable. It's basically for show and display.
El Salvador has mined 0.006 Bitcoin, or about $300, using geothermal energy from volcanoes.
Volcano energy, which is totally renewable and very cheap, is an excellent source of energy. And what Bitcoin mining does is essentially enables you to convert that energy into money.
But crypto journalist David Gerard says at 15 cents per kilowatt hour, Bitcoin mining in El Salvador makes no economic sense.
The average rate for Bitcoin mining is 5 cents a kilowatt hour. When the inputs cost 3 times as much, that's probably not a sustainable business.
So why the big fuss? Because Bitcoin is legal money in El Salvador.
Companies that might move there for Bitcoin mining don't face the concerns that they have everywhere else with jurisdictional legal issues with Bitcoin.
But there are still concerns.
How stable is the jurisdiction? How stable is that country's environment? How good are the economic institutions there?
On Thursday, thousands of citizens marched through the capital protesting against the Bitcoin law, calling their president a terrorist and a dictator.
The president needs to show his plan as being a big win, even if it isn't, because of the demonstrations against him last week.
So some people are saying that they don't want government involvement at all, and therefore El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender is actually counterproductive to the overall goals of the Bitcoin community.
But many are supportive.
It's great for Bitcoin, it's great for El Salvador, it's great for humanity, because the more energy that we can use to secure the Bitcoin network, the more valuable and secure this network that we can all access is.
El Salvador is known as the land of volcanoes. About a fourth of the country's energy production already comes from geothermal sources such as volcanoes. Phil Zhou, NTD News.
And Disney and Scarlett Johansson have settled the dispute over the movie Black Widow. Johansson sued Disney because she was contracted to receive part of the film's box office sales, but she argued releasing the movie in theaters and on Disney Plus on the same day reduced her payment for the movie. Disney said doing so actually increased her potential earnings. The parties aren't disclosing the terms of the settlement, but both the actress and company say they plan on working together again, including on Disney's Tower of Terror. Sounds fun. And would you wear food waste as a bandage? Well, you might consider it after this story. Scientists in Singapore have found a way to turn discarded fruit peels into Band-Aids. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
Scientists are turning discarded durian husks into antibacterial gel bandages. Cellulose powder is extracted to make soft hydrogel, which is cut into bandage strips.
In Singapore, we consume about 12 million durians a year. So besides the flesh, we can't do much about the husk and the seeds. And this causes environmental pollution.
The moisture retained in the strips keeps wounds cooler and moist and can accelerate healing.
So one of the applications, useful application maybe for people or folks with a skin condition like eczema. So the one of the common problem, if you're itchy, then keep on scratching, the itchiness comes on the dryness of the skin.
Researchers say they're cheaper to make than conventional bandages, which use antimicrobial properties from the more expensive metallic compounds like silver or copper ions. Tan Ang Chuan is a durian wholesaler. He said he goes through at least 4,000 pounds of durians daily during the season.
It will be more sustainable. It will be better. They can use it to make something. Then we don't have to use the garbage truck to dispose of them, which is less sustainable.
This technology can also turn other food waste into hydrogel, such as soybeans and spent grains. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Pretty neat. That's the latest business updates for this week, in fact. You can still catch NTD Evening News, though, with Stephanie Cox. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, it's all for this week. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to catch all of our programs on TV. NTD Evening News is on every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Find your local NTD channel at ntd.com/TV.